The Burden of Silence, Fear of Mistakes by Alex Saul. Parts 2. The Turning Tide. As morning broke, Ellora quietly packed her suitcase. Her decision to leave was final. The weight of the villagers' expectations and her own fears of failure were too much to bear. On her way out of the village, she saw a young boy trying to help his father build a small shelter. The boy carried a bucket with a hole in it, spilling nearly all the sand by the time he reached his father. Yet, his father smiled proudly, patting his son's head in appreciation for his effort. Ellora paused, watching the interaction. The boy's clumsy attempt wasn't perfect, but it was enough. It was his heartfelt desire to help. That mattered. She realized that helping the people you love isn't about perfection. It's about trying, giving your best, and supporting others, even if mistakes are made along the way. Her steps faltered. Slowly, she turned back toward the mayor's house. Ellora's secret condition. When Mr. Wilson opened the door to find Ellora standing there, he was stunned. Before he could speak, she declared, "I'll take responsibility for finishing the project, but on one condition." "What's your condition?" Mr. Wilson asked cautiously. Ellora hesitated, her hands trembling. "You must promise to keep my involvement a secret. Let everyone continue believing John is responsible. I can't bear the thought of facing the villagers if something goes wrong. If even one life is lost, I won't be able to live with myself." Mr. Wilson frowned, conflicted. "Ellora, I don't understand. You've already done so much in secret. Why are you still so afraid?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I'm not afraid of the work, Mr. Wilson. I'm afraid of the blame. I can't handle being seen as a failure, or worse, as the reason someone dies." Mr. Wilson sighed deeply. Time was running out, and he had no choice. The villagers couldn't afford to lose Ellora's expertise. "Fine," he said reluctantly. "I'll take the credit, but you must promise to guide me through every step. This village needs you, Ellora." Ellora nodded, relief and anxiety washing over her. The work continues. Before the plan was set in motion, Ellora made one thing clear to Mr. Wilson. "When you announce the revised plan," she said, "tell the villagers that John secretly prepared these blueprints and instructions in case something ever happened to him. Let them believe he was always ready to protect the village." Mr. Wilson frowned. "Ellora, are you sure about this? Why not take credit for your work? The villagers deserve to know the truth." Ellora shook her head firmly. "No, Mr. Wilson. I can't take that risk. If they knew it was me and something went wrong, they'd never forgive me. Please, just follow my plan. Say that John, even from his hospital bed, had the foresight to ensure the village's safety. It's the only way." Reluctantly, Mr. Wilson agreed. Over the following days, Mr. Wilson announced the revised plan to the villagers, attributing everything to John's brilliance. "The blueprints and plans you see today," he declared to the gathered crowd, "are the result of John's unmatched foresight. Even while recovering in the hospital, John thought of everything. He left behind detailed instructions to ensure the safety of our village." The villagers were inspired, rallying behind the idea that John's legacy would save them. The trust they had in him spurred them to work tirelessly, finishing the project under Mr. Wilson's direction. Ellora worked tirelessly behind the scenes, ensuring every detail was correct. Despite her fears, she remained focused, knowing the village's survival depended on her. But her secrecy came at a cost. On her way home one evening, some villagers spotted her with the mayor. "Why's she with Mr. Wilson? Useless Ellora doesn't belong anywhere near this project." One man sneered. "Yeah, she's just trying to mooch off John's success." another added. Ellora ignored the cruel remarks, bottling her pain. She didn't have time to dwell on their words. There was too much at stake. The storm hits. The day of the typhoon arrived. The shelters were complete, and the villagers huddled inside, trusting in John's designs. Everything had gone according to plan, and the villagers marveled at the shelters, praising John's brilliance. "What a masterpiece," they said. "Even in his absence, John's work protects us." Mr. Wilson, however, knew the truth. As the villagers settled in, Ellora quietly arrived at one of the shelters. Her presence didn't go unnoticed. "Why is she even here?" someone muttered. "She doesn't contribute anything." "Yeah," another chimed in. "Why would Mr. Wilson let her hang around? What use is she?" Still, others brushed it off. "Let it go," they said. "We're kind people after all. Besides, she's harmless." Ellora ignored the whispers. She didn't mind staying unnoticed. She was there to oversee the construction, ensuring there were no last-minute issues. Secretly, she remained ready to act if any problems arose. For hours, the wind howled, but the structures held firm. Then, a strange sound echoed through the shelter, a deep, unsettling groan. "Mr. Wilson," someone asked nervously, "is everything all right?" "I'll check," he replied, masking his worry. Turning to Ellora, he added, "You're coming with me." The villagers murmured in confusion. Why would he bring Ellora, the so-called useless engineer? Some even offered to accompany him, but Mr. Wilson waved them off. "Enough! Just the two of us," he said firmly. One villager whispered to another, "So weird. Maybe he's afraid someone's mad enough to hurt her. Could be he's just bringing her along to protect her." "Maybe," the other replied, shaking their head. "But why Ellora of all people? She's not even useful." The whispers lingered, but Mr. Wilson paid them no mind as he led Ellora to the source of the unsettling sound. Together, they climbed to the roof to inspect the structure. Ellora carefully examined the area, but shook her head. "It's not the roof," she said. "The sound is coming from the foundation. We need to check the basement." They descended into the basement, which had been constructed during the early stages of the project, under John's supervision. As they entered, Ellora froze, her heart sinking. "Oh no," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What is it?" Mr. Wilson asked. "He used weaker materials than I specified in the blueprints, probably to save on costs," she said, panic rising in her chest. "The foundation is compromised. If we don't act now, the whole structure could collapse." Mr. Wilson's face paled. "What do we do?" Before Ellora could answer, the wind outside intensified and the shelter shuddered violently. Suddenly, the basement door slammed shut, trapping them inside. Mr. Wilson staggered, clutching his chest. I can't breathe." "Mr. Wilson!" Ellora cried, rushing to his side. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. The stress had triggered a heart attack. Chaos erupted in Ellora's mind. The villagers were in danger. The foundation was failing. And now, Mr. Wilson needed help. She clenched her fists, trying to focus. Ellora forced herself to focus, her mind racing. She scanned the dimly lit basement and spotted an old hydraulic machine, a device used to lift heavy loads single-handedly. Trapped and unable to call for help, she knew the only way forward was to act. First, she turned her attention to Mr. Wilson, who lay pale and unconscious. She stabilized his condition, administering CPR with steady hands and positioning him to ensure he could breathe. With Mr. Wilson stable for the moment, Ellora turned her attention to the failing column. The sound of cracking concrete and shifting pressure echoed through the basement. She began calculating the forces at play, visualizing how to redirect the pressure and reinforce the structure. She moved the hydraulic machine into position, fighting against her rising panic. Every movement required all her strength, her body straining under the weight of her task. Her mind, however, remained sharp, running through formulas and possibilities as she worked. Finally, after what felt like hours, she secured the machine in place, using it to brace the column and redistribute the pressure. The terrifying groaning noise began to fade, replaced by a tense silence. The typhoon passed, leaving the village battered but standing. The aftermath. Upstairs, the villagers were too terrified to move. They had heard the unsettling sounds from the basement, but were too afraid to investigate. Once the storm settled, they bolted toward the basement, shouting, "Mr. Wilson, are you all right?" A group of villagers forced the door open and rushed inside. What they saw left them stunned. Ellora stood in front of the hydraulic machine, her hands bloodied, her body trembling with exhaustion. The column, though damaged, was reinforced and stable. Beside her lay Mr. Wilson, breathing steadily thanks to her efforts. The room fell silent as everyone processed the scene. The village doctor knelt beside Mr. Wilson, checking his condition. "Who did this?" he asked, his voice filled with awe. "Who gave him CPR and saved his life?" Another villager's eyes widened as they looked at Ellora. "Ellora? Was this all you?" Ellora hesitated, her exhaustion and fear making it hard to speak. She looked at the faces around her, unsure of what to say. For so long, she had hidden her abilities, afraid of judgment and blame. But now, there was no hiding what she had done. One by one, the villagers began to realize the truth. The so-called useless engineer had just saved their leader, and possibly their entire village. But then Ellora suddenly turned the narrative. "No, you're mistaken," she said, her voice steady but humble. "Maybe I was able to do some of these things, but everything you've seen, everything John has done, those are his own achievements, not mine." The villagers exchanged doubtful glances, their expressions a mix of confusion and silence. No one said anything further. They turned their focus back to caring for Mr. Wilson and fixing the chaos left by the typhoon. While the doubts lingered in their minds, they chose for the moment to respect Ellora's words and be grateful for what she had done. Ellora left a note with the doctor and requested, "Please give this to Mr. Wilson when he wakes up." The next morning, as Mr. Wilson regained his strength, the doctor handed him Ellora's note. It read, "Mr. Wilson, thank you for trusting me when I doubted myself. I ask only one favor. When people ask about the typhoon, please tell them I helped after John's accident. But don't let them believe I did everything. John deserves credit for bringing my ideas to life and ensuring the village thrived, even if he made mistakes. Ellora." Conversation and reflection. A few days later, Ellora visited Mr. Wilson. They spoke at length about the events of the typhoon and the village's recovery. Mr. Wilson, true to his promise, kept Ellora's role a secret and respected her wishes. As they talked, he finally asked her, "Ellora, I've respected your decision to cover for John, but I have to know, why? Why do you still protect his name?" Ellora smiled faintly, her gaze distant. "Mr. Wilson, maybe John was wrong to take all the credit. Maybe he was wrong to manipulate me or cut corners with materials. But if it weren't for him bringing my ideas to life, who knows? The village might not have had the buildings we do today. While I didn't take charge, he ensured my ideas became reality." even if he didn't fully understand their value. Yes, he made mistakes, big ones, but he also got the job done when I was too scared to act. I don't believe in erasing everything he did just because he was flawed. When he recovers, I want to work with him. I believe he can do better. And I owe it to myself to stop blaming him for everything when part of the fault lies with me. You see, Mr. Wilson, if we share our knowledge recklessly with people who aren't ready to handle it, it can be dangerous. I let my fear hold me back, and that's on me. But John gave my knowledge a platform, even if he didn't always handle it the right way. Mr. Wilson nodded thoughtfully. You've got a good heart, Ellora. And perhaps that's what will make this village better. Not just the buildings you design, but the example you set for all of us. When John eventually recovered, things between him and Ellora changed, but not in the way one might expect. Both had come to understand their own mistakes. Ellora realized that her fear of stepping forward and taking responsibility had created the conditions that allowed John to misuse her talents. John, now able to speak, but still unable to walk, reflected on how his actions had manipulated a friend and jeopardized the trust of the village. Despite the awkwardness and lingering tension, the two began to rebuild their relationship. They discovered that together, they could achieve far more than they ever could alone. John's experience on the battlefield of practical construction and Ellora's endless pursuit of knowledge formed a powerful partnership. The secrets of their past remained known only to the three of them: Ellora, Mr. Wilson, and John. With time, they worked together to ensure the village continued to thrive, their teamwork becoming a testament to growth, forgiveness, and the strength of collaboration. The village, now proud of their engineers, celebrated both Ellora and John for their contributions. While they held Ellora in higher regard for her newfound confidence and dedication, they also appreciated John for his resilience and willingness to adapt. Together, they showed that even flawed paths can lead to great outcomes when people learn from their mistakes and support one another.